Hello and welcome to Do the Right Thing, your weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Alexandra.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I were aspiring writers, but we had a problem where we never actually sat down to write.
Exactly. So, to hone our skills without actually writing, we are issuing a challenge. Each week you sit down and write a complete short story using 3 or 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read a story sent in by you, wonderful listeners, and then we talk about the rest of the submitted stories.
Hey, you already know what this is. This is Do the Right Thing.
A Doof Media
Production.
What's up in your life, Jarvis? What's going on?
Nothing much. I'm currently in my grandmother's closet because I'm in Pflugerville right
Smells
now.
like home.
The great, heavily populated town of Pflugerville. So if I sound a little bit different, it's because I'm in a closet next to a mini fridge. But I've just been here for the last couple of days, and it's so strange to see how my small town is now basically like little Austin. I mean, there's like so many more people here. They've built 1,000 different apartments, and the air really feels like suburb. So
that sounds terrible.
Yeah. I mean, I went to the park. I went to the park yesterday. And normally Pflugerville Park and the Pflugerville Pool has some people, but yesterday it was like every family wanted to do a cookout, and it was like everyone there. Which I guess, yesterday was Juneteenth.
Right.
So I understand why, but they weren't the typical demographic of people who would celebrate Juneteenth.
I
if that
see.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Right.
So they probably didn't. I mean, I'm not gonna discredit them for not knowing what Juneteenth is, but something told me that they didn't know what Juneteenth was.
It's like 4th of July, right? It's just like 4th of July. It's
similar.
Independence Day.
It does deal with independence. Yes. Should I actually tell people what Juneteenth is?
Sure.
Some people really don't know.
Probably most listening, I think, do. But if they don't, that's perfectly all right. We have listeners across the world, right? So,
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead and tell the not joke version of what Juneteenth is.
Of course.
Juneteenth.
So, a very long time ago, after about 300 years of slavery of African Americans, there was the Emancipation Proclamation signed by Abraham Lincoln, which basically freed all of the slaves. And this was supposed to be across the entire nation, but in the South, specifically Texas, slaves still weren't free. And they weren't free for 2 more years. Even though a lot of these slave owners did know about this sort of bill, they decided not to free their slaves. So it wasn't until people from Washington had to come down to Texas and go to every single last plantation saying, "Hey, you need to free your slaves. They are free people now. You can't keep them here." So yeah, they went all throughout the South, all throughout Texas, ending in Galveston, Texas. So yeah, June 19th really is it just marks the day where all Black people were truly free from slavery. And of course, after that, there were numerous pitfalls and of course racism and, everything else. But the story doesn't end there, and it still hasn't ended. But that's still one of the major milestones of when African American people can truly be people, when they were truly free. So I know in Austin every year there's this really great parade that goes through downtown. But it is really cool this year because maybe if y'all didn't know, it is now a official holiday, which is long overdue. Overdue.
People get days off now for it. I mean, next time, I guess.
Next time, even though next time it falls on a Sunday, but still, it's great. And I'm happy that it is a official holiday. The pessimist in me, of course, feels that it feels like
PR move.
Yeah, feels like a PR move, especially coming off of the protests of last summer. But at the same time, I'm still excited that, such a great holiday that is definitely pretty prevalent within my family and within the people that I do know within this community, that it is official. We are really getting our shine out here. So, that just makes me happy, even though I'm still a raging pessimist.
Yeah, I think that's the unfortunate reality. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm glad that it's finally a thing, and I'm looking forward to celebrating for the first time next year. So
yeah, honestly, if you ever find yourself in Austin, you have to become a part of the parade. I'm telling you, it's the best food in the entire world there. It's really fun, and it goes through every single last street. Like it goes from 6th Street to East Cesar Chavez, like the whole city. It's great.
I don't know any of the streets, but I'll presume that was that sounds like it's at more than 6. So that's at least 7 streets.
At least 7 streets, exactly. At least 7.
Right. Okay. Also, before we get into the actual words and everything, I did want to say, so we've been thinking for a while. Sundays are our sleepiest days for some reason. We're just super, super sleepy and tired on Sundays. I think it might be because Saturdays we stay up all the time. And it used to be for classes. Now it's just for nonsense, but we're still doing it.
Yeah, just because we can.
So we're going to be moving the schedule just a bit. We're going to be moving it so that we record on Tuesdays and we release on Wednesdays. So words will be coming out on Tuesdays going forward, and episodes will be going out on Wednesdays. And so this coming week, the words are still coming out today as of recording on Sunday, but you will have until next Tuesday to put in your words rather than Sunday. So yeah, I hope that's
which
not
I think
too disruptive,
it'll.
But yes,
yeah, and I think it'll definitely give y'all a entire weekend to really get your stories out and really work on them. And I think overall it can really boost our alertness during this podcast, and hopefully it can boost the content that we deliver for y'all.
Yeah. That said, who knows? I'll probably be getting a job and moving soon in the next couple of months. So who knows if we'll have to move it again really fast. But regardless, the last thing before we get into the show, there is a Do the King thing contest going on. So that is a writing contest hosted on the Kingslingers podcast. It's the same format as the Doof the Right Thing contest that we've had in the past with cash rewards and voting by patrons, etc. Except it is Stephen King themed. So if you want to go see it, go look at it on the Doof Media website in the Do the Right Thing tab, or there's also links on our Twitter and on the subreddit and on the Discord. So go check that out if you haven't, and go send a submission. You might win up to $100, which is pretty cool. So
yes, and don't forget to do the King thing.
All right. Let's get into the podcast proper. What are the words this week, Jarvis?
Yeah, thank you so much for asking. So the words for this week were collar, terrestrial, hiccup, and miracle. So strange words, but I can definitely see that these stories for this week really took these words and used them in very interesting ways. Yeah,
and continued the theme of villains. And did it in different ways. What's the story we're reading this week, I ask, because I forgot that we didn't actually settle on which one we're going to read.
Yes, so the story we will be reading and also talking about this week is by NickedYou with the Crusaders.
That's right. Let's just get into it.
Sure.
The Crusaders by NickedYou. We all had gifts from God, some more than others. However those gifts are used is up to us. There are those who would use their gifts for evil, to commit terrible sins. They might act the part of being good, but they are far, far removed from the ways of Christ. It is because of this that the most righteous and most gifted must crusade against those who would do the devil's work. That's what we are, the Crusaders. And tonight we have found one of the devil's servants, Weather Witch. She had proven dangerous. She had fought against the police when they did anything she did not like. She had defended dozens of dens of iniquities, and threatened those who would protest godless ways. But now her time was up. She would face judgment before the Lord. "Sanctuary," Apostle said. "You almost ready?" "Yes." "Yes," Sanctuary answered over his radio. His gift brought peace and impeded the violent acts of the unrighteous. We strode from the darkness into the light of a street lamp, coming into view. Weather Witch panicked, faced with the power of the Lord. She tried to move, but found herself bound by Sanctuary's gift. Her hands still sparked with flame and lightning. We would have to take her before she could resist. God is all-powerful, but we had learned that the gifts he bestowed upon us were not unlimited. Apostle started to close the distance rapidly. Speaker threw air at the girl. Just as Weather Witch might have attacked, she had to put up a defense instead. She still blew back, and was knocked to the ground. Apostle was closing in, adorned with the symbols that Covenant had prepared. He said they would protect from her lightning and fire. Apostle got close and struck at the girl. I felt a small pang of guilt that someone this young may be deceived and tempted into sin. But she had made her choice. Apostle got a few hits in, quickly, striking at her collar and face, but Weather Witch blasted with fire and lightning. Apostle was not too badly hurt, but could not continue his attack. Speaker blasted Weather Witch with more wind, keeping her from regaining her footing. I reached out and used my own gift. I could undo evil acts. Even the small bruises and burns that Apostle may have sustained were reversed. Apostle moved again. He kicked at the girl's ribs, eliciting a shout of pain, followed by coughs and sobs as he continued. Sanctuary's gift could not hold indefinitely, but Weather Witch was injured now. She would not be getting up easily, especially with Speaker able to knock her down again. And I could heal any damage she did. I and Covenant were far enough away that she would not be able to hurt us. And if she got close, Covenant's work should be able to provide us with some defense, so I could keep my allies safe. I watched as Apostle started to strangle the girl. She was able to get her leg up and kick him in the groin. He fell to the ground in pain. She started blasting at him, at point-blank range. Even with Covenant's symbols, he was being seriously hurt. "Miracle," Covenant said, tense. I nodded. "This is not beyond the gift God has bestowed upon me." Speaker knocked the harlot to the ground again, and I restored Apostle, fully. He took out a knife, ready to end this. No more punishment by pain. She needed to die before she could do anything serious. "Small hiccup in your plan," a voice said. We knew the voice, and froze. Channeler. A man with incredible gifts from God, who had been unsatisfied and taken gifts from Satan as well. That was the only explanation for how powerful he was. He descended slowly from the rooftop. "Apostle! Finish it!" Speaker shouted, shooting a gale at Chandler. Apostle almost struck true, but Chandler extended a hand, wreathed in green and blue fire, and Apostle fell to the ground, dead. I hurried to reverse the damage, but Weather Witch was crawling away out of reach. He said something under his breath and started running. "You should not be picking on children," Chandler said. We knew the demon he was currently holding in himself. It granted him power, speed, flight. We could not win this. We would have to run. "Run now, and you might live." Defeat tasted bitter. "Fuck that!" the girl screamed. She started shooting fire and lightning at Apostle. I panicked. I kept undoing the damage done to him so he might run. Fuck you bastards! I cringed at the girl's language. Apostle got out of her range, panting. Chandler was floating toward us. Time to go, Apostle said. Chandler's eyes changed color. He now hosted a new demon, one we had probably not seen before, whose temperament might be different and maybe less inclined to let us go or toy with us rather than simply kill us. Yes, I agreed. We need to go.
All right, so yeah, I really enjoy this story. I like the concept of this sort of like superhero troop that's heavily religious, and I like how it's playing on gifts from God and gifts from Satan. And I also really like this sort of like naming scheme. And yeah, I think it's all really fun, and it really does build this world. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of a more serious take on like Bible Man, if you are familiar with that.
What is that?
Yeah, so it's basically this sort of like after school special that they play in Sunday school, where there is this man named Bible Man, and basically he would fight crime and like teach kids good Bible lessons, while also like fighting crime and having like all the gifts of God. Like he's actually strangely like really strong somehow.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean this definitely sort of like reminds me of that, at least when it comes to the religious aspects and how how this like main character is cringing at the language of this like little girl. I thought that was a really fun moment. But yeah, I think like this story is really supported by being told from the point of view of one of these religious superheroes, you know, and we do get a really strong sense of how they are thinking in face of these two who probably have maybe not even necessarily bad in intentions, but in intentions that aren't deemed by God. So yeah, overall, really, I really like how this world is being built thus far.
Yeah, I like this take on villains, putting in a more like traditionally like, you know, good side of the story sort of perspective, but clearly making them at least ambiguous in villainy. I like that it's kept ambiguous how villainous the other side is. I get the feeling that maybe Weather Witch is more of like a vigilante or something. Or like a, you know, sort of gray villain, but they seem like they're willing to kill. Yeah, where they fight police, but they are generally good. And Chandler, I think, is interesting also as like a maybe more villainous, but also standing up against, you know, things that aren't right like this. And I also like all those times where the perspective really comes in, like with the language and stuff like that. I think for that, for example, would be a really great thing to put in, you know, when you're wanting to like draw out, you know, the hypocrisy or the sort of like challenge to their beliefs that the character is facing. Like when Apostle is like kicking this girl in the ribs, right? I saw the word that like she's like sobbing and coughing, right? And I thought that was really interesting. It was a little too fleeting for me to like fully grasp on it, but I was wondering like if at that moment she had like cursed and said like, you know, fuck, that hurts, right? Or fuck, you're hurting me. Then it's like having the admonishment about language at that moment would be really great to really juxtapose of like, you know, that's a curse word said in pain, right? Not just like anger.
And then also didn't Apostle like take out a knife and was about to kill her? So I mean, on that same point, it's really definitely pointing out that hypocrisy, you know, how they're willing to kill, but don't curse. Yeah.
I would have liked to know a little bit, particularly for like figuring out what the positions of Weather Witch and Chandler are, just like how sanctioned these Crusaders are and how like common their worldview is. Because I think there's a big difference in the way the story feels if like the world is sort of run by at least like a semi-theocracy, or like most superheroes are these kind of Christian superheroes, right?
Yeah.
Versus this is like one team that is basically like a villain team that just like kills people for not being godly, right? Like those are very different feeling things. I do also I do like how like it's ambiguous if it's coming from God or not. Yeah, I thought that was interesting as well.
Yeah, definitely. And I know NickedYou said that they wish that they had more time, which I get. 30 minutes isn't enough to set up a entire overarching world. But I do think that if you were going to take a second stab at this, that sort of pulling the eye of the viewer back and sort of showing us is every hero troop like the Crusaders? Are they just the villains that have these sort of twisted views and other people are trying to stop them? I think sort of pulling the actual camera back and letting us see what is happening outside of this fight can really give us so much more perspective on how we are really supposed to feel about these characters, because if the Crusaders are the heroes, well, them being so willing to kill, that isn't really a stereotypical human trait. But at the same time, apparently Chandler used to be a Crusader or something, but has taken his power also from the devil, as said by this main character. So yeah, I mean, I think using this main character's perspective is really nice because it does color the world. I just think on a second go, it would be nice to either validate or invalidate this main character's perspective by showing us more of the world outside of this battle.
Sure, yeah. Speaking of the battle, I thought the back and forth of the fight was pretty well done. Obviously, I think some polish could be used in different places, but I think this is just something that improves it for practice. I don't have much specific to say, other than adding some more environmental cues, or I mean, I really like the moment where they step out of the darkness into the light of a street lamp, particularly just because it's just a street lamp, which is great. The whole darkness into light, and it's just I just thought that was funny.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I also think that adding a bit more imagery when it comes to what these characters are wearing could also really fill out just the look of this world. I'm not really sure if they're in full stereotypical superhero getup, or are they in streetwear with a couple of emblems,
Are they dressed like nuns and ministers,
Yes. Are they dressed like priests, and are the other guys dressed in gimp suits? I don't know.
It could be anything. Use your wild imagination. But those are small things. I think the fight works on its own, and I feel like maybe it's a little bit long for what you're doing with it. I feel like you could cut just a couple paragraphs, because some of those moments could be used for more emotional purposes than just like the one where she's getting kneed and some sobs come out, and also when she's cursing. Those are great moments, but there's a couple times where she just gets knocked down and gets back up again, and so since you kind of have multiple of those, I feel like they could be probably put together and stuff. But I definitely understand the desire to have a back and forth in the fight, and trying to have a balance between it being interesting and having that back and forth while also not being too long, while also not being too short. It's hard to hit the right balance, but I think practicing it this is a really good way to do that. So
yeah, definitely. But I mean, overall, this is a really solid foundation for a short story that I think could maybe say a lot about not only this world. It can also speak to our current world. I think this story definitely has a lot of possibilities for the sort of social commentary, especially by having this sort of religious angle to it. So yeah, I mean, I think this is definitely one of those stories that I would think it would be really smart to like revisit and like work on and really sort of build that depth within these characters and scenes without sort of focusing too much on the breadth of this story and, you know, everything else that really goes into this world.
Sure. Yeah. Obviously, there's other places doing stuff with superheroes that I'm sure have gone into, you know, so to inspire this a little bit. But if you haven't, The Boys, I think, has a lot to do with Christian superheroes, and I think they're handling it pretty well. I think
does, actually, yeah.
Worm has a little bit, but that's more just about superheroes in general than specifically about the Christian ones. Although the sequel has a bit, I think. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think it's cool just to have more additions. There's always room for more commentary, or at the very, or even like, I mean, it's not so, especially for practice stuff like this, it's not like bad to like have a similar message that's already been written either. Like, mm-hmm. I think that's definitely worth practicing as well, and seeing maybe if you can do better than some of those other examples in articulating your message. So, and that's a general thing, not just for this story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. I mean, nothing is better than a nice fusion, you know, taking odds and ends from other stories that you like and putting it within your own story to create something that is similar yet new and fresh. You know, I think that's a real challenge here, is creating something that's fresh, you know. Mm-hmm. As I said, this is a really nice foundation, and like you already have some really solid dynamics when it comes to these heroes and these villains and how they sort of interact with each other. So yeah, I would just say keep on working at it, and yeah, I'll be really excited to see a more fleshed out short story.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for submitting it, NickedYou. We really appreciate it. Let's get into the rest of the listener submitted stories.
Exactly. So thank you so much to everyone who submitted your story. I love not only seeing plenty of stories in the Reddit this week, but also seeing that there's some really solid back and forth when it came to comments. So thank you so much to Haunt of the Heron, Blairy345, Jarby Jazz, Matt Said Words, Mora Didamail, Paradox, and of course NickedYou. Thank you so much for leaving your stories.
Yeah. Let's go ahead and get into them.
Exactly. So the first story we will be talking about this week is by Haunt of the Heron with "We Shall Fight on the Beaches."
I really like this. So mm-hmm. This is basically presidential speech describing a bit, but it's quite subtle. So in the beginning, it describes this global climate crisis with these like hurricanes coming into the United States, and then particularly goes into depth about how in like India and other equatorial countries there is the heat is rising unbearably to like basically lethal levels, right? And it never goes down. And how there's refugees going everywhere, and that's where it subtly and slowly takes a turn, and we're like, oh, it sounds like describing and recognizing the problem means that this country, the United States, is going to help, but no. It talks about how, and I like how it's presented, where it's like starts off with a whole paragraph talking about how the United States is about nation, liberty, and justice for all, and safety and protection to the world. But then finishing with, to do that, we have to make sure that each and every American child is safe. And so they describe how they turn the idea of refugees into invaders, and how they have to defend the coastline from these invading refugees who will destroy America. And, gets really dark. And at the very end, it closes with, actually, I'm not going to read it out loud, but basically saying the 14 words, minus the word white in it, which if those of y'all don't know, the 14 words is like a white supremacist dog whistle.
Should I say it?
Something that they say to.
If I said it?
Yeah, sure, if you want to.
Yeah. we must. Oh well, I should just read it and not read the actual 14 words.
Whichever.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I'll just say what the 14 words are, because this is something that I've noticed that a lot of people don't really know about, it'd be a really good educational moment. We must secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, because the beauty of the white Aryan woman must not perish from the earth.
Yeah, so that second one is usually left off because it's like even more explicit.
Yeah.
But the first one is like, they can like, it's just barely like not hostile. It sounds like it's defensive, so they can sometimes get away with it, but it shows up everywhere. With white
Steven
supremacists.
Crowder said it.
Yeah, I saw. I forget who, but it was a United States senator basically saying something along those lines, not using the exact words, but then if you count the number of words that she used, it was 14. So it's like, yeah, it's the same message. Also, so other white supremacist number is 88. Everyone who's read Worm obviously knows what that is, but 8 is the as in like the eighth letter of the alphabet, which is H. So 8 is Hail Hitler, and there's a couple other ones, right? Anyway, yeah, so Hunt of the Herons piece is just like, oh yeah, there's a white supremacist president and America first, etc. And it's a sort of dark timeline thing. It's also really sucks because it's like, that this climate crisis was very much caused by the United States, right? So
yeah. But yeah, I mean, honestly, this is a really solid, I guess, speech, really. I like how this story or this speech from this president really does hook you in the beginning before it goes into these very, nationalist talking points, really. How it talks about the problem in a very humanitarian way, before saying like, yeah, but we have to make sure that we are good first. We have to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves and not letting those others come in and causing crime. And I mean, I really do like how this is very much so mirrored from a lot of speeches that, I've heard, maybe not from our president, but from numerous people that are in power within the U.S., So, yeah, I really do like how this story is taking a lot of these very real issues and a lot of these very real talking points and putting it in a fictional space that is able to sort of lightly satirize it, to present this sort of villainy in a very bold-faced light, So I mean, overall, I think it's a really solid piece. It's a really strong speech that is showing that's showing how a speech like this can hook you and then hit you with these things without you actually knowing that you are listening to it,
Yeah, I think
really
that's a good reason for this sort of piece to exist, right? I think it's like that. I know it's like not necessarily like a story with a focus on fantastical entertainment with twists and turns, but I think like, yeah, when you read it, you see this example of like, in the beginning, you're actually totally on board because they're describing this problem. You're like, yeah, America's going to help, right? And, we have almost like a responsibility and we have the power to do so. And it's sort of like you're buying into it as you read, and then it has a turn. And so maybe someone reading that, identifying that turn would be able to, in the future, be a little bit better about identifying that in a different speech, that sort of turn. So I think that is a purpose and benefit that this kind of story brings to the world. So
yeah, definitely. So thank you very much, Hunt of the Heron, for submitting your story this week. And up next is Blari345 with Petty Vengeance.
So this is a cute story. So I like it. It's nice and coherent. We have this character who is a villain. I mean, we find out he's a villain through the story, but he makes 2 cups of tea, right? And he puts in one some drops of special ink, although it's not really ink. It's just what he's calling it. And he goes to his boss, Sloan, who he hates, gives him the tea, and they have the meeting. And then through the meeting, the main character starts hiccuping, right as they both take a sip. So the implication that the main character accidentally drank the poison tea, which gave him hiccups, which is very, very embarrassing. And so red-faced, he has to leave the meeting room, foiled again, just because he didn't keep track of the cups.
Yeah. So I mean, like as you said, this is a very cute story. I do like how the intentions of this main character is sort of hidden till about halfway through and the ending, and I do like the how this person trying to get vengeance by cursing the other one with hiccups does get their due at the end. You know, I think it's a really solid story, and of course there is a message to be learned here, you know, but I mean overall it's written really strongly. Yeah, there's not really that much fat. We don't spend any time really learning about this main character too much beyond their antics, which is fine. I mean, it's very serviceable for this story. But yeah, I mean, overall, I think this is a really fun and cute story that shows us the lighter side of villainy. So really great job.
Yeah, if you wanted to complicate this, I think like complicating the motivation, you know, why is this main character trying to embarrass Sloan specifically, and how does that tie into embarrassing themselves, right? And you know, you can build a theme out of that, and build around that. I like the little world building touch about them having just fancy clothes and stuff. I feel like that could have gone just slightly more in depth just to sort of confirm it, because I wasn't sure when I read the description about the clothes if like it was just a strange description of normal clothing or if it was actually like fantastical clothing. And I think it's fantastical clothing, so just a little bit more just to like confirm it. But yeah, I like the story. I think it's a fun practice story for sure.
Yeah, definitely. But all right, thank you so much to Blari345. And up next is by Jarby Jazz with A Secret Underground Lair?
With the question mark. Yeah, so this is a continuation of that series about the flesh crafters. And in this one, from SD's perspective, and I think as Jarby Jazz is writing these characters, they're getting more and more of a strong hold on who these characters are and how they think and such. And I think that comes across in the narration. But from SD's perspective with the captain, Harris, and they basically just talk a bit before they go into this barn where a flesh crafter might be working underneath. And there's just some you know, fun little more world building, but more personality stuff that is more important. You know, SD gets pretty upset when she finds out that they might have been wasting their time and stuff like that. But it's nice sort of them having sort of a connection over this case.
And yeah, I mean, I think on the actual story aspect, I think that them finding this possible lair, but then also Harris sort of still saying like, oh well, I mean this lead is going nowhere, but they're still just following any lead to sort of get closer to where this flesh crafter might be hiding out. I just think, you know, this is again building on top of these previous entries very, very nicely. So yeah, I think that the characters have great control, and I'm really looking forward to when this plot hits that turning point and sort of changes, you know?
Sure. Yeah, and speaking of when it turns that turning point, once you like really establish what the back and forth of these characters are, and I'm not saying like the next entry needs to do this. I feel like if you wanted to wait, you definitely could wait a while. But once you establish what the dynamic is, do something to change it up and you know, see how those characters act if they suddenly have to be even closer, or they suddenly hate each other, or they have to be secretive around each other, or whatever else. You know, add a twist in that dynamic and see how you adapt writing the characters, but it doesn't have to be right away. What's the next story?
Yeah, so the next story is by Matt Said Words with Hostile Company.
This is also a continuation off of that series that's taking place on Mars about the leader of the Mars colony that's kind of gone mad with the not Da Vinci. What's his name? The painting. What's the guy? Melty clocks. The Dolly painting. And sort of the cover up going on. So this is sort of flashing back to that last scene, but this time from where the sort of like leader, the sort of chief came in. I forget what they're boss of, but came in and just chieftain deleted the evidence basically. And then here we have his partner has gone in and during that conversation actually went into the back and sneakily actually downloaded the stuff that was getting deleted. And I like how the moment of the downloading is actually very tense. We're not sure if the download is going to complete before he deletes it. In fact, I thought that he did delete it before I understood that, it was actually in a couple more seconds, which I think was not... I think was a misinterpretation of what was written, but I don't think it was like a bad one because I think it's plausible to like hear some words and think that something's about to happen when it actually happens later. Anyway, the point is it was tense and it was good. We had that explanation of that poem that we didn't understand, so thank you. I still don't get it, but I understand it, so it works in the story. It's fine. But I don't understand how the only emperor is the emperor of ice cream talks about death and how we choose to ignore it, but it's fine. That's on Stephen King, not you. So
yeah.
Anyway,
that one line reminds me a lot of Psychonauts, the milkman.
Sure, I never played it, but I heard good things.
Oh yeah, I am the milkman. My milk is delicious.
Is that a poem?
Yeah. Well, no, that is his line, and he's basically like the big bad somehow.
Okay.
But it's just really hilarious. You have to play Psychonauts. It's like a golden standard classic.
Yeah, that's true. I've stopped hearing about it recently. I heard it a lot when I was like growing up and like first getting into video games, but I haven't like no one's mentioned it in a while for some reason.
I mean, they're supposed to be working on a sequel, but
ooh. Anyway, I like the story by Matt Said Words.
So I mean, it is a really strong story. Of course, it's still building on this world that is really interesting and has a lot of political intrigue. I just feel that this story is really not only giving us a lot more backstory on these three characters, but also it's building this tension, and I do feel that the tension is really well placed within this story, and we're getting a lot more bits about like the significance of this poem and like their own personal character in tension. So yeah, I think that this story is really really well placed because it is attempting to answer a lot of the questions that I had, not only about this world but about these characters. So I think definitely going forward, I am also looking for that not only this tension to be built upon even further, but again seeing that change within this story when like maybe shit does hit the fan and then the stakes are present,
I like how I like how the plot sort of is getting more complicated, right? Where the boss thinks that he's deleted the information, but it's actually been saved by Sin. Except that the two characters that found out the information don't know that she saved the information. So I expect that they'll be going off doing things and it might actually run counter to Sin's efforts. And a lot of balls are going to be bouncing around, and I think that's neat.
So I mean, overall, really, really great entry. And I'm just looking forward to seeing how this story evolves past this. So great job.
Who is next?
Yep, so the next story is by Mordidamail with Return to Omelas.
Did you read the original, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas? So it's a short story. I'm pretty sure you can read it online. But for context, so by Ursula K. Le Guin, who wrote a bunch of other classics, including A Wizard of Earthsea, which is kind of a fantasy classic. Very poetic, but also like not too poetic. She's a pretty great balance. And she wrote a bunch of sci-fi as well. But this, she wrote the short story Bloodchild, which is the fucking most fucking whack, like batshit fucking like short story that I've ever read, because it was like so like grounded.
So it's bad?
And like I like all these things are like, I'm saying like it was out of the ordinary and surprising. I don't want to spoil it because I just like feel like going into there not knowing what the story's about is great, because that's what I did, and I was like, what the fuck. But it's a sci-fi story, and it's very grounded, very poetic. But the subject matter is wild. Anyway, The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas is one of her short stories that's really well known, and a lot of scholarship is done about it, because it's like the way she writes it. It sort of is like mythological in the sense that it doesn't have a setting. It's just about this amazing city, and it doesn't really matter the details about it being amazing, but the premise and spoilers for it, and you should probably just go ahead and read it. Not that like the spoiler really matters. It's just like it's more like a thought experiment. Anyway, so if you don't want to listen, skip forward like 3 minutes, or just pause and go read it. I'm fairly certain it's fairly short. Anyway, this perfect city, either it's like super sci-fi or they use magic. It doesn't really matter. But everyone there is happy. Everyone there has everything they want. It's just a perfect society, except at the center of Omelas, there is a young child kept in an abandoned room, never interacted with, and only given enough food to survive. And it's kept chained there. Just a child, a poor child. And everyone in Omelas is told that if anyone shows any kindness to the child, then the whole society will collapse, right? And so The Ones Who Walk Away from Omelas is about the people who like choose to walk away and to leave the city, right? And then there's a bunch of other, scholarship and people talking about, would it be right to reform it, to undo it? And then different forms of like, what if Omelas is actually like a lie and it doesn't need the child to suffer, or maybe it really does, or what can you do to make the child suffering somehow ethical? Anyway, it's a good story. Go read it if you haven't. It's fairly short. More than the mail does basically like a little fanfic about it, which I think is really, really. Fanfic seems like demeaning considering it's like this is more of like a thought experiment. So I think it's a good addition. But basically, in this. Told from the perspective of like a commander of like an army, they go and conquer Omelas, right? All they do, since it's like a perfect place, anyone who tries to do violence in there, it doesn't work. The closer you get to the center, the less violent you're capable of being, right? So what they do is they go in there and they just give the child just a bit of food, because that's all like everyone in Omelas is like given the opportunity, but nobody does it. And so the magic fails, Omelas falls, and becomes like a normal city. They get conquered. But all of the people of Omelas become like the best and most obedient citizens because of how like shamed they are that an outsider looking to conquer them is the one that finally showed kindness to that poor child. And none of them did it. And I think that's really interesting, and I think you can do a lot of reading into there. I don't want to get too much into the themes because I just spent so long summarizing what Omelas is, but yeah, it's a really good story, and I think it's definitely worth thinking about this scenario.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, from my reading, not reading the original short story, but I definitely will after this. I just really enjoy like just how this story sort of unfolds. I mean, it does set up this child, but I do love the concept of this city and how, as you get deeper to the center, you are less, you can't do violence, but the way that they saw to actually conquer this city is through kindness. And I mean, that does make sense as to why the actual people that are from there would be more obedient, because of that shame. Just by reading this, it makes me want to go back and read the original text, but it is saying a lot on, like, not only what you might, even though these invaders are going in with the quote-unquote wrong intentions, they are able to do more objective good than the people that were living there. So yeah, this story just gives you a lot to really think about, and I think it's a really solid story, and I think everyone should come and read it.
It's funny because I'm already like kind of disagreeing with some like particular points of your analysis of the themes, but I think that's kind of the point, is that you go back and forth and you're like, was this right, was this wrong, and such. I mean, if you made a direct comparison to like real life of like another country providing kindness to poor people of another, right, and then using that to take over, I think like in real life, the people who lost would feel entitled to all the good things that they had. It would not feel like any shame, right? So it's like the people of Omelas are even better than the ones in real life if this is their reaction, because in real life they would like spit on any children that they found because they're like, you didn't continue your sacrifice, and because of you, now we're conquered, So,
I see.
But not that this makes it wrong. It's just like interesting, twists on the perspectives and stuff. Anyway, what's the next story?
Yeah, so the final story for this week is by Paradox with Struggle.
So this is another superhero story. I think we almost chose it as well. So we have this character pacing back and forth in front of some windows where they can see that buildings are collapsing as this great war is happening. And they are sort of talking to themselves, sort of talking to their sort of father figure, this like scientist sort of figure that they've never met. I'm not even sure if they've like talked to them. I think it sort of implies that maybe at some point in the past they did, or at least communicated in some way. But it's clear that like this is some sort of like either experiment or like a mutant that's been like taken under the wing of this mad scientist that's trying to take over the world. And this mutant, this main character, basically decides, seeing all the destruction, seeing heroes dying to defend the world against these subsurface invaders, says that they have to stop this, even though they're definitely the bad guys. They're definitely going to try to take over the world, but they need to help the heroes because they need to continue. They need to ensure that the world continues existing if they want to take over. And so there's sort of this sort of like wrestling with this invisible father figure that is just like visible or behind cameras and stuff. And I thought that was interesting. It's like that kind of wrestling before finally the mutant steps out, knowing that they might die, might be killed just for disobeying, but they are not, and they get to join the fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So yeah, I really enjoy this sort of character in Tension. It definitely reminds me of the DC character of Lex Luthor. How even though he is a villain, whenever the world is in danger, he's literally the one coming up with how to like save the world. And I really do like those like kind of arcs, showing how like even though you might be on the quote unquote villain side, there are greater things than self-interest. And I think that's sort of like explored pretty well throughout this story. And I also really do like the concept of this main character being like under the thumb of their father figure, which they don't really know. And I don't think we ever really get that sort of back and forth between them and this figure. But I just really like sort of like where this main character is sitting within this like wider world. You know, I am reminded of that movie, Danny the dog. You know, where this person was bought in the slave trade, and like he was a super fighter, but he had to work for this like mob boss, because he's the one that like owned them, only to further, you know, break free of those chains. So yeah, I mean, like this story is definitely really character focused, and I think it's successful because of that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, overall, I just really enjoyed, and I think that the ending is pretty perfect, and I like how it's left very open to what this person's fate might be. So really great job.
Yeah, I think we do dwell a little bit too long without adding like twist to the question that's being asked. The whole thing about, you know, we can't allow this. It's sort of asked kind of over and over for a lot of paragraphs, and I feel like that could be condensed a little bit, or adding in very different arguments. Because it seems like it's the same argument a couple of times about, if we don't help them, there will be no world, and then we can't take over it. And so we have to help them. And that, I think it's said a couple of times. So either like diversifying some of those arguments or adding in some other wrestling with that father figure kind of thing, I think would be really interesting. But I think this is a really great center and conflict for a story. And I know I'm really focusing on the like father figure aspect, but the other stuff is really cool too. The world building and the fighting and all that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, all right. Those are all of our stories for this week. And thank you so much to everyone who did submit your story. So we'd like to give a big old Do the Right Thing thank you to you. So thank you very much to Haunt of the Heron.
Thank you to Blari345.
Thank you, Jarby Jazz.
Thank you, Matt Said Words.
Thank you, Mora Did a Mail.
Thank you, Paradox.
And thank you, NickedYou. And we would also like to say thank you to everyone who did leave comments. Leaving comments not only under your own story, but under someone else's story, not only condenses all of your own ideas on your own story for everyone to see, but you are also providing someone else with crucial feedback that can only improve their and your writing. So, thank you so much to Matt Said Words, NickedYou, Jarby Jazz, and Haunt of the Heron. Thank you so much for leaving comments.
Yeah, always appreciate that.
If you want to be like all of these wonderful writers and submit your story to Do the Right Thing, you can do that by going to Reddit at /r/Do the Right Thing. All you have to do is sit down for 30 minutes and write a complete short story using 3 or 4 randomly generated words from that week.
That's right. And it's come to my attention that there's like a small number of people that do listen fairly often, but don't seem to have the time to, or don't, no, that's not true. Not that they don't have the time to do the right thing, but they don't feel comfortable submitting because being afraid of, I suppose, judgment, or that their work isn't good enough. And let me reassure you, I've written total garbage on here, and I read it online, on air for all of y'all to hear. And it was fine. So, like, you know, you're protected by your username. It's not like I know you. None of us are going to judge you just for, you know, this is practice first and foremost. And it's just to get you to write. So, and we can also give you like feedback to help improve. And we're never going to be like harsh or rude about it. At least we're going to try not to. So yeah, don't be too afraid about submitting your story, even if you don't think it's good. It doesn't have to be good to be submitted. In fact, I would say submit your garbage, because that's what Do the Right Thing is all about. It's about making a bunch of garbage and then making it better garbage until it's like fancy garbage, and people would kind of shame you for just throwing it away. But it definitely like is garbage. So you're like, I can't keep this in the house, but like I can't recycle it either. So you're kind of just like stuck in the middle, and it just kind of ends up in your garage. That's the kind of stories that we're all about here at Do the Right Thing.
Yeah, definitely. Stephen King says something pretty great, and I'm gonna paraphrase real quick. But basically, you are not a good writer until you've written your first 1,000,000 words.
Yeah.
And that's within short stories, novels, whatever. You need to get all of that garbage out of your system. And you do, and you should show it to other people, because you can't become a better writer if someone can't read your writing. Great things aren't made in a echo chamber. Diamonds are made through pressure, through temperament and treatment over a long, long time. So to really foster and hone your own skills, you have to put it out there, even the worst of what you have, because that horrible, horrible story is just a part of your first million words.
Yeah, it's part of your journey. That said, if you don't feel comfortable submitting, that's totally okay. Just saying it might be good for you, and also we'll be nice about it. So, yeah, and maybe, getting over that fear about showing your work, you might start benefiting from feeling motivated about hearing your work talked about on the podcast, which when I was listening to So-Called Writers back when it was going on, that was part of my motivation, right? I wanted to hear my username and my story talked about in the mouths of the podcasters doing it. So anyway, that all said, let's get into the rest of the outro. If you want to see the words as soon as they come out, the best way to do that would be to follow us on Twitter at RightThingCast, or on the Discord, which we post the words there every single week. Also, don't forget that we will be changing the release date of the words and submissions to be on the words will be released on Tuesdays, episodes on Wednesdays. So yeah, don't forget that as well. And you'd be able to see announcements about that on the Twitter as well. If you want to send us an email, ask a question, just tell us about your day. Really anything that's not just trash that we get a lot of spam. It's really annoying.
Yeah.
But our email is rightthingcast@gmail.com.
Of course. And if you want to support us and everything else happening in Doof Media, you can do that by donating to the Doof Media Patreon. Donating $10 or more per month not only gives you access to exclusive bonus content, including the latest Doof Over, but also you are granted the possibility of voting in numerous polls of future content.
Yeah, that the voting is available at every level, including the $5 level, which grants access to the monthly Doofin Chills. But it's really relevant right now because there is a new Do the Right Thing event going on. It's not run out of our podcast. It's actually run by Scott and Matt over at Kingslingers, but they're doing a challenge they're calling Do the King Thing, where you're basically challenged to write a Stephen King-esque short story. So if you want to go see the details on that, I've posted the link in the subreddit. It's also in the Discord. It's also on the Doof Media site. If you just go to the Do the Right Thing tab or page on the website, it's the one with the big red logo. That's the Do the King Thing. And you can see what the details are. There's rewards. I believe it's $100 for winning first place, $50 for second place, $25 for third, but that might be a little bit off. I apologize. And there should still be a good amount of time left to submit, so please consider submitting. It's basically another Doof the Right Thing, so yeah, please submit to that. I'm considering submitting to that, even though it would probably be nepotism. And again, if you're a patron, you get to vote on that. Mm-hmm. And yeah, there's plenty of other stuff going on in the Doof Media Network. I know there's more bonus content coming on the High Ground podcast, which is one of our really, really funny ones. We have that new podcast on the network, Pale in Comparison. They're great. I need more time to listen to them. Their mom is also reviewing Wild Bow Works. It's wonderful. So a lot of options, a lot of things going on at Doof Media.
Nice. So I think it's high time to roll into next week's words.
All right. What are they?
Yes, so next week's words are bundle, chip, joke, and champion. Okay, I'm kind of digging this.
Yeah, I like them. They're a bit silly, which always, I'm so serious and special. I can't have jokey words, but so I do have that instinct. But I don't know. These are fun. So a bundle, as in a group of something that is usually bound together, close together, like a bundle of logs, a bundle of dollar bills, something that's like a group that's bound together. Chip, which as in the flavored snack, potato chips,
a microchip.
Or a microchip. That's it. I didn't think about that one. It could also be a chip off the old block, or any sort of small piece coming off of a bigger piece.
It's also someone's name.
That's true. I don't know. Is it short for something, or is it just... Some people are just called Chip. Is that
I think it's more like a nickname, but I don't know why.
Okay. Well, the next one is joke, which is a funny. It's when someone tells a funny. When they make you do a haha, a hee haw.
When they make you waffle.
Yeah. Or I was trying to make a joke about like it being me or something, but me just sounded like not that funny, and then I was trying to think of other people, but everything else just sounded mean. So
yeah, but you know, a lot of jokes are funny because they poke fun at other things and or people. So
okay,
that should be fine.
Okay. So a joke like my dad. Sorry, Dad.
Okay.
Anyway, okay, last word is champion, which is someone that is a representative sort of warrior for something, usually in a good sense, or representing fighting on behalf of something else. Someone could be a champion for the Lord. They could be a champion for a princess, for the evil queen, or whatever else. So yeah, those are the options. What are you going to be writing next week, Jarvis?
Yes. So my story next week is going to be set in the Big Crush universe. Basically, the Big Crush universe is this happening that happens across the entire multiverse, where all of them start to collide in on one another, thus making people multiple versions of themselves, but within one host body. And due to this, there is this sort of weeding out program, so that the people that are deemed dangerous will be weeded out of the mainline society. And the way that this happens is that each section of the world produces a champion. And the great champion for North America is the stand-up comic Chip. Now, you see, he is more of a like slapsticky kind of guy, and he doesn't really fight. So a lot of people wonder, well, why are we choosing Chip to be our champion when Russia literally has a guy who has a gun for a hand? You know, it really doesn't match up that well. Well, you see, Chip has this special power, and it's this power of comedy. You see, Chip has this idea that instead of fighting with his fists, while the other guy is trying to kill Chip, he jokes about the other guy to get the audience on his side. He will win the match by default. So, in his very first round, he is bundled with two other comics, but they aren't as funny as Chip, of course. And the match is going pretty well. The other comics die really, really fast because they aren't really that good at dodging. But you see, Chip is really flaming him. He's like, "Boy, look at those shoes, man! What happened to your arm? Were you masturbating too hard? Yeah. You know." And he was really flaming him, right? But Chip definitely got shot in the arm, but he was able to finish his tight 5 minutes. So, by the end of the match, it was called a draw because Chip did, he is bleeding, but the other guy was bleeding in his heart.
Wow, that's really good. I love how there's 3 other comics. Just, where are they even from? Are they all, did America send like a whole comedian team? Okay.
Yeah. So like each nation picks either a group of people or one person, just depending on their assigned power level. Okay, I see.
Okay, great. My story will be about the Chip champion. So there was a bag of chips. And then post-apocalypse happened. Nukes went off. All the people died, and only rats and cockroaches lived. And the radiation made things come to life, including this bag of chips. So this bag of chips is a small society of Chip Society. They live in a gamer room, right? He had spilled his chips all over the floor, and now they're all alive. So there's this chip champion. He's gonna be the champion of the chips because a rat came in and ate some of the chips. So he has to go fight the rat. He goes to fight the rat, and he brings a whole bundle of like weapons and defenses, including a bunch of guns and stuff, like small chip-sized guns. Mm-hmm. And he shoots the rat, and the rat's like, because the rat's smart because of the radiation. The rat's like, "Is this a joke? These guns are so small." And then Chip's like, "Well, I'm not small." And then he jumps into the rat's mouth, and the rat's like, "Okay, tasty snack." And he eats the chip champion, but some chip gets stuck in the rat's throat, and it chokes and it dies. Whoa. Ultimate sacrifice.
Yeah, I mean, hey, he accomplished his main goal, but at what cost? You know,
his life. That was what the cost was.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't think sacrificing yourself is always the right thing to do, but within the context of this story, I think the chip champion really did the right thing.
You said it twice.